All right, let's dive into the first story of the day. Straight actor Darren Criss is sparking debate because he has called himself, quote, culturally queer. So during his speech, this all went down at a speech at the Chicago Entertainment Expo. Now, he also said that the things he's tried to emulate, learn, and be inspired by are 100% queer. So, is this allyship, or is the term, or calling yourself culturally queer, problematic? What's your take on this, Jamie?
Yeah, I think, when we say that we're culturally something, it can be really flattening, right? Queer culture is this very broad spectrum. The queer umbrella is very big. So what does it mean to be culturally queer? Is it brunch and having a lot of dogs and cats and plants? Like, what does it mean to be culturally queer? And I think it's fair to say that you're part of an artistic community, that you support and appreciate the culture, but to identify it, I think that's where he runs into trouble. Because queerness really is just being not within what a culture describes as normal for gender and sex. So then how do you identify that with that culture of being outside of that? I think those are some questions that he has to think about before he just applies it so broadly.
That's really interesting.
But aren't we all just a little bit queer? Like, here's what I feel like.
Right?
I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I can speak for myself. Like, almost everyone I know has had, if they haven't had experiences themselves, and a lot have, they've had desires, they've had fantasies, they've had interactions. I feel like very few people fall into a strictly heterosexual context. So this is where I wonder if it's maybe a bad choice of language, but more, I guess maybe the only thing that I want to think about is this is somebody who, by all measures, is an ally. So I don't want to think about everyone falling on this sort of attack mode for somebody who's actually doing good work. Let's save our rage for people who are actually doing harm and harmful activity.
You make a good point.
Amen.
You make a good point, and I don't know about the queerness part, but I do know that he's making a lot of money playing queer characters on television and on the big screen. So that's where it gives me a little bit of pause, where it's like, yes, it benefits you as a white heterosexual man to say that you are culturally queer because it's financially has benefited you, and you have to be very careful with the words that you use. But I'm telling you, if you flip it and say, like, okay, I grew up in an all-white neighborhood, I went to an all-white school, all my friends were white, the food that I ate was white, wouldn't it be very strange if I sat here and said, well, I'm culturally white?
Well, but
right? When you flip it,
sexuality and identity, I think, are a little bit different. I appreciate everything you're saying. I just feel like you're like, our sexuality is so malleable and it's so ever-evolving.
But he is straight and married to a woman. He's living his private life as a heterosexual man. So it's not like there's some ambiguity here. And I think it's always problematic. We've seen Buffy St. Marie do it. We've seen Shania Twain do it, also Harry Styles. And it's always problematic when you have somebody who is culturally kind of standing under the umbrella, kind of going, yeah, but I'm culturally this. And it's like, but you're not.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that when we think of queer culture, we're really looking at the oppression that has occurred, right? We know that queer people are more likely to be unhoused, more likely to have violence perpetuated against them, more likely to have self-harm, more likely to be unemployed. And so a lot of our culture has been finding the joy in liberation, the beauty in liberation. And so what happens when he hasn't experienced those parts of it?
That's where I wanted to go, is that if you want to identify a certain way, understand that people who do identify as part of the LGBTQ2S+ community, there is a consequence often when you identify and publicly identify that way. There's discrimination and there is violence and. So I think that, to your point, Andrea, is like the idea that you can actually step out of that identity. And it's very convenient for you. And you can still adopt a child. You can, there's all these things that come to you because you're a heterosexual white man. And so I'm raising a daughter to be very, very queer positive. My daughter has been raised on RuPaul's Drag Race, I will have you know. And I know some parents are gonna just at that, but I want to do right by her. I want her to be an ally, but in no circumstance will I ever tell her it's okay to call yourself culturally queer, unless one day she comes out and wants to identify as
actually
part of
is
the
queer.
community.
And action is what really matters, right? Modern queerness is to care about intersectionality. So around class and racism and thinking about gender and colonialism. And so if he takes action around those things as part of a coalition, that I think is really powerful. But to just say that you're culturally queer without that action, that to me is the issue I have.
And making a good living being culturally
That's
queer.
exactly it.
Hey there, what did you think? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can find more on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. See you soon.